Serious, what is the scariest thing that you have ever encountered while home alone? I was house sitting for some family. They neglected to mention that their cat knows how to open doors. I learned this at 2 AM when the bedroom door flung open. Unrelated to Home Alone stories, but my roommate's dog knows how to open our back door. Worse than that, knows how to unlock our damn front door and open it and get out. Yeah. Luckily that door also has a chain lock, so we decided it always needed to be chained when the dog was inside. Reminded me of a scene from Jurassic Park when the raptor figured out how to open the door. Animals are smarter than we think. I was taking a nap in my apartment under blankets in my bed when I hear the door open. Thinking it's my husband, I ignore it. But about 5 minutes later, I hear several female voices. Him thinking I'm dreaming, so again, I ignore it. The voices get louder and suddenly my bedroom door opens. I freak out and bolt upright in bed. 3 women were in my apartment. 2 young, 1 older. I shriek. They shriek. They run out of my apartment. It turned out that the management company showed the wrong apartment available for rent that day. I got an apology and a bouquet of flowers. I lived in a house with some guys in college and was homesick with a cold. I was laid up in bed, half delirious from cold medicine, and watching YouTube on my phone when there was a knock on my door. Thinking it was one of my roommates, I said come in, and in walked my landlord and 4 random dudes. Because I was a bit delirious from the cold medicine, I immediately yelled, "Who are you people? What are you doing in our house?" Exclamation mark. The landlord's eyes went wide as saucers and he hurried the guys out of the room. Got a call later from him apologizing and saying he was showing the house to prospective renters and that one of my roommates had told him it was fine. My roommate probably told me, but again, I was so out of it from being sick and taking cold medicine that I completely forgot. I can relate. I once lived in a building where the realtor got a little too comfortable not informing me of showings and just letting himself in. My girlfriend and I were in the bedroom getting busy and I heard voices in the kitchen say, "Hi, we're here." My buddies were around using my laundry machine, so I just yelled, "Yay, so what? Busy in here." I then hear the realtor's voice say my name. We toss on clothes and open the bedroom door to a family of 3 staring back at us. Young me was just embarrassed. Now me would have been livid. No matter though, as we had some good laughs afterwards. Was in the shower when I heard the door to my apartment being unlocked. Husband wasn't due back for several hours. Turns out it was the skeevy butt building manager snooping around people's apartments when he thought they were not home. Reported him to the company that owned the building, but nothing ever came of it. Moved out shortly after. I was woken from a deep sleep by the most horrifying high-pitched howling noise. We live deep in a wooded area, and I was familiar with sounds like foxes barking or even fisher cats screaming. But this was eerie and didn't sound like an animal. Then it came from the other side of the house, but there was no sound of anything walking. You know how your mind isn't really logical when you first wake? I was convinced it was some terrible otherworldly creature. In the morning I checked some online recordings of sounds to figure it out. Turned out to be a tiny harmless screech owl. Little guy can make some demonic sounds though. First time I heard a fisher cat in my backyard at night I nearly shat myself. Those things sound like screaming human babies and just, no. At the time I wasn't familiar with them, so I noped quickly back into the house. I didn't know what a fisher cat was until I was backpacking in Maine by myself. I was setting up camp alone by headlamp when the screeching started and I was freaking out and the sound kept moving. Frantically looking around with the little beam of light, trying to set up my hammock and tripping over myself. I sat up in my hammock holding my hiking poles like a weapon for an hour. Talking with another hiker the next day, they told me what it was, which calmed me down because I was still all sketched out. I was maybe 11 or 12 and was home alone one winter day. The desktop computer I was using shared a wall with our unheated garage. The house was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. All of a sudden this boom erupted from the garage that shook the wall. It honestly sounded like a bomb went off. 20 minutes later, after hiding behind the couch and getting my heart rate down, I finally went to inspect. A 2-liter Sprite bottle had frozen and exploded off the shelf. We have an older home, and one day, one of the garage door springs broke. Not that uncommon it turns out, but new to me, since they're under tension. It sounded like a bomb went off in the garage. You're lucky you weren't in there when it broke. Those things'll cut you in half. No exaggeration. Growing up we had large old mirror with a thick wood frame leaning against the wall in our hallway. I was doing some homework in the kitchen, but got up to get something from the living room. The hallway is the connecting room between the two. So I passed through it, picked up whatever I needed in the living room, turned around and was on my way back. And that old mirror is broken on the floor. It's shattered. Pieces everywhere. As if it had exploded. It was completely fine when I passed it just seconds before. I didn't hear it break. I just kind of walked by it and headed out the kitchen door. Scared the shit out of me. Wood moves and twists with agent humidity. GL but dosed. My guess is that there'd been pressure and tension building for ages until the GL butt gave way. Why? Yes. S. You probably already figured this out and know. Oh, no fun at parties. S. Edit. Thanks for the awards. S. And thanks especially to those who said they would party with me. E. The first night alone at my new house, a dude tried scouting around my home looking for a way in. I flipped on all the lights and ran downstairs as loudly as I could holding a plastic tomahawk in one hand and my phone dialing 911 in the other. He never actually got inside the house, but it was terrifying, especially since it was literally my first night of living on my own. Right, that's it, my plastic pirate fancy dress sword is now my first line of defense. Problem with the plastic pirate dress sword is that it requires an eye patch to really sell it. My husband was having a dude's weekend, and I was home alone with our kid. The downstairs neighbors were fighting, nothing new there, when all of a sudden I heard her scream, "Help me, please God, someone help me." So loud I knew she had run out the kitchen into the back stairwell. She was crying and screaming. Their baby was screaming. Then there were thumps and more yelling. I had already called 911, and while they were getting my information everything went silent down there. The baby suddenly stopped. Everything was quiet. I told them to hurry. The police arrived, and I had to let them in the building. So much for an anonymous report. And they pounded on the downstairs door for a while with no answer. They tried calling the landlord to get permission to break down the door, but one officer came up to ask me if there was another way in. I showed them the back stairwell and said they were unlikely to have bothered locking the kitchen door. They hadn't, and the officers got in. Nobody home. They came back and asked me again what I'd heard, and another officer hung back. The family was finally found in the basement. He said they'd all been down there doing laundry and hadn't heard the police knocking. Bullshit. People down the block could hear them threatening to break down the door. We'd drawn quite a crowd. She insisted everything was fine and she and the baby were safe and sent the police on their way. Nothing they can do if she insists she's safe. I couldn't sleep all night, and they were extra cold to us after that. A few months later I answered the door to two police officers responding to a report of DV. The downstairs neighbors claimed they'd heard screaming and thumps and then saw my husband jump in his car and speed away. I was home alone, still in my nightgown. They could see lots of skin and no visible marks. And my husband had been out of the country on business for 3 days. They got in trouble for the false report and moved out later that month. I hope she eventually left him. I had neighbors like this. One day someone was having a bad fight and we called the cops, but we weren't sure which unit it was from. They knocked on a few units to find the right one and they actually arrested a guy. The next day our shared wall next door neighbors left a passive aggressive note taped to all the doors berating the people who made a false report and disturbed their night. I tried to apologize, but they never answered their door. I wrote a note and I could hear the woman complaining how I'd had the nerve to leave the note. Turns out she was so past because they were fighting all the time. Mostly her berating him. In the time we lived there we found out their first names, what kind of pets they had, when they went from engaged to married, because they stopped arguing about the upcoming wedding, and how his stepmom had ruined their now past wedding. Her job, what kind of invisible disability he had, and that he mostly sat there and took her mood swings and she spent most of her time yelling about what a disappointment he was. Good times. Had a few entertaining fights through the wall. Two of my favorites were hearing "No, I don't have a ducking hair dryer. I'm bald." And of course I suck dicks. I'm a stripper. Apostrophe. I was probably about 12, newly allowed to be home alone for a couple hours over the summer. A man was walking through my fenced-in backyard. Walked right onto my deck to the back window. My dog was going nuts barking with her hair standing up. I had no way out of the house or to the phone without this man seeing me in the window. So I'm hiding behind the couch waiting for him to break in. When I see him exit my yard through the gate, I immediately call my mom almost in tears, and she said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you the gas meter guy was coming." Of course the gas meter is right next to the window my brother and I always used to break into our own house when we forgot our keys. My dog was the only bad but that day. I was babysitting a family I was unfamiliar with. My parents knew them and suggested me when they needed a babysitter, and as I liked having money, I accepted. The kids go to bed and I kill time as wonders before smartphones are a thing by reading, I think, maybe doing homework, but that seems unlikely. Anyways, I start to hear speaking from another room. Not just speaking, but this low, almost demonic voice speaking to another one. I'm not a religious sort, but when you realize that no, you're not just hearing things, there's definitely a voice, it's more than a little creepy. Not knowing what was going on, I slowly crept up to the doorway of the sitting room, then peered around the corner. Fucking Furbies. Talking to each other. At night. In the dark. Furbies suck. I was at a family friend's house one time, and they were doing a yard sale. My friend's younger brother had his Furby on the table, and I was like, "Why are you selling your Furby?" Apostrophe. He didn't say anything. He just smacked it, and the thing came to life with that low battery demonic voice. And I'm like, "UHH, change the batteries?" He then opens it up. No batteries. And the goddamn thing is babbling away. Pretty much the same shit happened to me. I woke up in the middle of the night to it talking. My mom took the batteries out the next night, it started talking again. And I knew there were no batteries, so I threw it against a wall. A tree branch crashed through my window when I was home alone playing Xbox. I've always thought I would be prepared for like an intruder or something. But if that was a dude that just like did that SWAT rope swing thing through my window, he would have had enough time to walk over to me, grab a gun from my hand, load it, and shoot me before I figured what the duck went on. I was like one of those goats that faint when you scream at them. What's really funny is that I've laughed more from reading the comments on this post more than most that are not marked serious. Last week there was one about weird things kids have said about their imaginary friends, and I was so scared I woke my husband up and made him go get our sleeping toddler and bring him into our bed because I could not deal with seeing the video baby monitor after what it read. It's a relief that when you weed out the made up stories and wild conjectures, it's so much milder. I was babysitting my little sister. We were both watching television. All of a sudden I hear gunshots and bullets ricocheting from the window security bars. A moment later I hear moaning and screams coming from my front door. It was a drive-by shooting. 3 teenagers were shot up and managed to crawl to my door seeking help. As a 14-year-old at the time, it was something I was definitely not prepared to handle. Oh man, that's rough. Did they survive? After everything, a detective came by and updated us that they survived. Screams of ducking foxes, as in mating. No joke. Almost shat my pants the first time. Oh my god, yeah. I thought I was hearing someone being murdered the first time I heard it. I was home alone, since my husband was away on deployment. One night as I was falling asleep, both my dog and I heard someone on the porch walking around. My dog flipped out, and I decided to go downstairs. I grabbed my gun out of the safe and headed downstairs. About 2/3 of the way down I saw the man through the front door windows. We locked eyes and he said, "Let me in." I told him that he needed to leave. Again. "Let me in." I told him he needed to leave and that I was calling the cops. "Let me in." I told him I that had a gun. "So do I," and he lifted up a gun and aimed it at me. I fired my gun through the window but missed him. He ran off. The cops found him a few blocks from my house a little bit later. His gun ended up not being loaded. Still, most terrifying shit ever. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.